So let's talk about building a list with filters. In particular, let's talk about some of the filters and some of the assumptions that go into that. Now, list versus model, right? That's what we're talking about. If you have a model, you have a whole bunch of different things that if they're each a little bit off, it doesn't matter a whole lot because you have a whole lot of pieces of information, hundreds if not thousands of pieces of information going into the decision-making process. When you're building a list, what you're doing is saying, I'm going to choose this criteria. So I'm going to choose equity. Well, equity is the unamortized loan amount divided by the estimated value that's provided by who? Whoever your supplier is. Now, anybody that, buys property and rehabs them and flips them for a living knows that the more flippable a property is, the further off that estimated value is going to be. And if you want to know how they do that, the way that they do it is that they have a high estimated value and a low estimated value, and then you have something in the middle. Now, if you're in Phoenix, which is why all the iBuyers go to Phoenix, other than that it's the capital of all real estate investment. But if you're in a place like that and you're in a tract housing neighborhood and you say, okay, well, in this neighborhood, I know that the highest possible value is 205 and the lowest is 195. That range is very small. If you're in the core of a city where the product is older and you have this inventory of properties that was built in like 1900 or something like that, well, then all of a sudden you say, okay, the high estimate is 700 and the low is like 444. So there's this huge gap. So when you're pulling an equity set, you're really saying that you're assuming that number is correct. And if it's off, if the estimated value is off by 10% or your unamortized loan amount's off by 10%, how much is your whole margin? How much does that throw your entire margin off? It's probably bigger than your margin. So again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't use it, but when you start making decisions based on one thing being true, it's a problem, especially when you start layering in other things. So let's pick on non-owner occupied. Non-owner occupied is a representation of what somebody wrote down when they closed, or maybe where their loan document. It depends whether you're using tax data or recording data, right? It does. So if you're using just the tax data and it says it's non-owner occupied, or it says that it's owner occupied, there are a lot of those properties that we call phantoms that are actually non-owner occ. And you can see that when you have a full demographic set. You can see, hey, we know that these people don't actually live here. We actually know all about the tenants that live there. And we know about the owners too, but they don't live there, even though it says that they do. So when you're making assumptions with building some list, you're assuming that all of these things are right. And there's some pretty big assumptions. And that's the reason that a model always smokes a list when it comes to front loading the return. We built a company on that. And, I think for years, people have been using them to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But the real value in having a model versus a list is not the ability to go big. It's the ability to go small.